the biggest single untapped opportunity is buying cars from the public, from people who are responding in the digital world to either ads or opportunities to sell their car.
From the Aishin Broadcast Studio, it's the Executive Spotlight.
Welcome to another episode of AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm Kyle Alexander, and today I'm joined by Dom Pope and Chip Perry with sellmyride. Hey Dom, hey Chip, thanks for joining me today. Nice having you guys on today to talk a little bit about vehicle acquisition and, more importantly, the transition that we're seeing in the industry to digital acquisition platforms. Obviously, we've got companies like you guys, sellmyride, that are leaning into developing these platforms, but there might be some dealers out there who may say there's still this, I don't know, like an unmet need for dealers to source cars directly from the public. So my first question to you guys, what is broken about how dealers are acquiring inventory today that a digital acquisition platform can fix?
I think it's just from the ground up. I think this hasn't been working for a little while. It's not something that's new. It's just there's not anything in the space to actually help dealers acquire the cars that they actually want profitably. So I think from the ground up, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for the dealers because it's not profitable. Often they are paying really high fees at the auctions and on other platforms for cars that they actually don't really want, and they don't make money on the front end. Why it doesn't work for the consumer is, it's not a great experience. They don't feel like it's a quick transaction. They don't feel like they're getting good value for money. So I think on both sides of the coin, it doesn't quite work at the minute, and the industry's sort of trundling along, just trying to get something out of it and something to work.
And I would say dealers have awakened in the last few years to the idea of buying cars from the public. They're emphasizing today the service lane, and obviously trade-ins have always been a big source. But the digital channel aspect is starting to get more attention these days.
I know, Dom, you kind of mentioned something about cost there. My question here is kind of what's the cost per acquisition for a dealer that's using some sort of digital acquisition platform compared to what they pay at auction for inventory?
It's often substantially less. In some instances, it can be up to a third less, 2/3 less rather, or half. So it's significantly cheaper. But it's not just a cost saving exercise up front. It's actually getting cars that are going to turn quickly, are going to make more gross for the dealers as well. So like the solution that we came up with, it wasn't, it didn't start off primarily as a cost saving exercise. It has ended up being a cost saving exercise in some instances, but it's all about actually getting the cars that dealers want that can turn quickly, low cost to market, and then great grosses in there as well. I think as well, by having that connection and relationship with the consumer as opposed to going to the auctions, you're creating other transactions and relationships that can be long-standing. That can result into actually, car sales as well. It's just another step up the funnel where you get that relationship earlier on, you build the trust, you purchase the car directly from the consumer, and then perhaps the consumer actually wants to go ahead and buy a car as well. So there's a lot of benefits to what we do. Like I said, it's not just a cost saving exercise, but in most cases it ends up being a cost saving exercise as well.
Absolutely. And Chip, I know you were kind of talking about trade-ins here too. How dealers rely heavily on these trade-ins to help build up inventory. It kind of involves a seller who needs to, complete this deal. So how do you convince a dealer to invest in acquiring from private sellers?
Well, it kind of comes down to the good old-fashioned profit motive. When dealers discover that their trade-ins don't meet all their needs, their next logical outlet is the auctions. Some have tried to tap into the service lanes, as I mentioned earlier, but the biggest single untapped opportunity is buying cars from the public, from people who are responding in the digital world to either ads or opportunities to sell their car. When we think about how the two big behemoths have grown in this space over the last 5 to 10 years, that's Carvana and CarMax. They've built a big brand for themselves in local markets all around the country as being willing and interested to buy your car.
Sure.
And most dealers haven't really, done much to fight back. So when you step back and look at how does CarMax do this? How does Carvana pull this off? Obviously, they do TV ads, and they have signage, and they have, in some cases, vending machines by the side of the road. But even more importantly, they now do digital marketing. They're out there aggressively on Google and Meta, Facebook, Instagram, with ads and links, asking people to inquire about selling their car. And so that's where Dom discovered there was a very fruitful, fertile ground that had not really been tilled by dealers a while back. And so when he discovered that and really mined it out in England and brought it to the United States, that's when I got excited about working with him when I saw the solution.
Yeah, I think the conversation that we have with dealers, Kyle, it's a really open one. When you say like how difficult is it to to sort of convince a dealer to go into this. Dealers are looking for this avenue. They're acutely aware of what's happening in their local markets, and as Chip's just alluded to, they're aware that Carvana and CarMax are really sweeping cars from out of their backyard. So
Sure.
they're very, very open dealers as I see it, and for the listeners to probably tell that my accent's slightly different. It's not a native one from the US. It's something that we figured out in the UK. We brought over here, and when we started to do a little bit of market research around what the market wants and needs, it was quite obvious that there was a really open field ahead. And every time we sit in front of a dealer, one of the first things they do want to speak about is acquisition. It's not a conversation we're trying to force on them. It's on the tip of the tongue as soon as we walk through the door. So it's a really easy conversation to have. Dealers are always looking for something new. From my limited time over here in the last 18 months, you can see that US dealers are very innovative and they're always optimistic about finding new solutions, in particular when it pertains to used car acquisition. So it's a really easy conversation to have.
For sure. It seems like this is kind of the new. It's keeping up with the times. Essentially, is like what this is kind of involving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I would say that there's a big mantra in automotive retail about meet the customer where they are when it comes to buying or selling a car. And when it comes to selling a consumer a car, it means meeting their needs for information at every step along the way. And when it comes to buying a car from a consumer, meeting the customer where they are means largely finding them in the digital environment. They're there. They're
Mm-hmm.
they're 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 probing around. They're asking questions on Google. They're responding to ads on Facebook and Instagram. But most local dealers don't play in that arena. So what sellmyride does is give them an opportunity to aggressively, with a strong weapon, a marketing weapon, get in that mix, get access to those opportunities, get those leads flowing, and that's one of the parts of our secret sauce that Dom mastered in England has brought to the United States, is very efficiently finding people with high intent to sell their car in the digital realm.
Awesome. And now, obviously, dealers have budgets to go get their inventory and whatnot. Say you're a smaller dealership somewhere that doesn't necessarily have the biggest budget to acquire vehicles. It's a smaller budget compared to a big auto group. In what ways does having and using a digital acquisition platform kind of help dealerships with these smaller acquisition budgets acquire these vehicles?
First of all, it's just looking into what they're currently doing in order and making sure that the processes that they have internally are, of a high standard. Ultimately, as good as we are, unfortunately, this isn't a just add water solution. It's going to take a lot of hard work and it does take investment. But I think having really great tight processes in place, the dealerships that we work with, small and large, start to benefit quite quickly. So I think depending on where they currently source their cars, could it be just the service lane, or is it they are buying from the auctions, or they're using third-party tools? I think the first thing they can do is really tighten up their process. The second thing is, if they do want to work with someone like us, it's making sure that when we are looking to find these consumers, that's happening in a really efficient way, i.e. we're not going after consumers with the cars that they don't want. So we need to really tighten that buy plan up. And then I think really this does pencil quite quickly, because ultimately we're looking to get cars that are going to turn quickly, and hopefully create them really strong gross margin, and then hopefully even opportunities to sell a car. So some of the deals that the dealers explain that are happening are really big. If they're acquiring a car for a great price, and ultimately even selling them on in some instances, these deals turn big quite quickly. And I think when you compare that to an auction deal, if that's currently where the dealer's looking, perhaps they're losing on the front end anyway. So dealer budgets can actually turn net positive quite quickly. So I think this solution does work for the smaller dealers. It's just all about having those type processes. Like I said, this isn't a just add water deal. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of investment, but it can end in really profitable outcomes.
And I would also say that for smaller dealers, the ability to throttle up and down the marketing spend to meet their budget needs is one of the distinguishing aspects of this kind of a product. Unlike fixed subscription fees that third parties charge, sellmyride enables a dealer to, increase their marketing spend and their acquisition volumes as their operations are able to handle it. And as Dom just mentioned, the more you buy, the better it pencils. But even at a relatively low volume, it still can be very profitable, with cost per acquisitions well under $1,000 and very positive ROIs. So small, medium, large dealers, they're all jumping in and finding exciting opportunities to do this today.
For sure, for sure. Last question here, and both of you jump in on this one for sure. What's the fundamental insight about private seller behavior that makes your approach to vehicle acquisition work better than everything else dealers have access to?
I think that's an interesting one. I think really over the last 4 or 5 years, which is how long we've been working on this solution across both sides of the pond, I think we've just been able to find these pockets of people that are really actually slightly different from the other parts of the market. When you think about Facebook Marketplace, or you think about the sort of Kelly Blue Books of the world, the people that we're targeting here, we're serving a different area of the market. They have different needs and wants, and they need to be found. And I think what I think is really interesting is how, I think we mentioned at the start, Carvana and CarMax have really addressed this market in a really strong way. And that's what we're looking to do. And how we do it is by having a really strong B2B value proposition, which is putting the dealership first, but actually it's helping the dealership with their value proposition. How do they put the consumer first? I think that's probably been one of the biggest things that we've worked on as sellmyride, is just how do we find more and more of these people who are not really being targeted by dealers in a traditional way. So I think it's just, there is a big area and big opportunity that no one's really tapping into. So I think over the last 4 or 5 years, that's what we've really honed in on, finding these audience types that dealers aren't really looking to serve. So I think that's what I found most interesting than anything else. And that was what hit me straight away when I landed in the US at NADA 2024. It was just the lack of dealership being serving these people. So yeah, I'd say that's the thing that surprised me the most.
And I think the other thing that's really fascinating here is that the digital marketing work that Dom pioneered in the UK and brought to the United States has really uncovered a new segment for dealers with that create a fresh source of opportunities. And what I mean by a new segment is a group of people, consumers, who are seeking to sell their car, but have an underlying, as you said, fundamental behavior, which is different than what they're seeing through their other traditional channels. So, Kelly Blue Book and Car Gurus and third-party people who request quotes from their cars happen to be different people than people who are responding through digital ads on Google and Meta and Facebook. They're just different. statistically. And so that uniqueness, that lack of duplication is very exciting for a dealer to know that they're tapping into a fresh new flow of eyeballs. And secondly, the marketing is sufficiently sophisticated that it finds people with strong enough intent that the conversion on the first step of the process on the landing page after they hit the ad and come to the dealer's front door saying, "I want to buy your car," the conversion rate on that page is astronomical compared to anything else that dealers typically do. They typically see 2 to 3%, lead conversion rates on microsites and their own home websites. We're talking 40, 50% conversion rates here.
Wow.
So the fact that the digital marketing is smart enough to find these people, and they're uniquely different than everyone else coming through the third-party channels, says, "Wow, this is a big, huge opportunity."
Certainly. Thank you both for your insight today. I guess I lied. I have one last question for you here. Anything else that either of you, Dom or Chip, want to add about these digital acquisition platforms and modern vehicle acquisition?
Well, the only thing I would say is that there's a marriage here between smart digital marketing and smart internal dealership operations that are needed to succeed. Meaning that once a lead is efficiently generated into the store, there needs to be a lead handling and acquisition team that nurtures that lead, sets the appointment, and brings the consumer in to sell their car. That's one of the hallmarks of sellmyride that Dom built into the company from the very beginning, which is strong weekly client success calls that are based upon integration with CRM data that enables our team to closely observe and watch and help the dealer convert leads at the highest level possible.
There just needs to be this continued paradigm shift where the dealers actually start to put acquisition as a higher priority than selling cars, because ultimately it's going to be the thing that they can control most when it comes to their revenues and profits. The dealers that we see that are really successful are actually having their acquisition team make more money than their sales team, which is probably the first time ever in the industry. So I think that continued shift needs to continue, where we're having dedicated acquisition teams, not just dedicated sales teams, because ultimately it's just taking that one step further up the funnel. If you think about it logically, that step up the funnel, rather than just trying to sell a consumer car, actually going after the purchase first makes total sense. And actually it's a much cheaper way to do it and results in more growth. So it's just that continued education, that continued movement, which I can see palpably. You look online, look on LinkedIn, the conversation is there. When you actually sit in the dealerships, it's happening. And, like I said, some of our dealers have really taken a hold of that. And then if they take a step back, they look at what these big companies in the States are doing, it's exactly this. So just that continued shift, you can feel it's happening. I think the awareness is growing and the education around this topic is getting better and better. So yeah, just enjoying that. And I think people just keeping their ear to the ground and keep learning.
Great insights, guys. Thank you both, Dom and Chip, for joining me today. And get ready for the next few months here until NADA, and hope to see you guys there.
Sounds great, Kyle.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much, Kyle.